using the Google form that is available under the YouTube Live description. If you do not see the link to the Google form to speak, you can refresh the YouTube live stream. For anyone who may attend in a little bit, although currently we don't have anyone here in the room with us, they will need to fill out the purple form, which looks like this, with the request to access the governing board. This is available on the table at the back of the room where you enter. If there's a public hearing during a meeting and you wish to make a comment during the hearing, you may sign up prior to the meeting, or you'll have another opportunity to do so when we open the hearing. That said, I do not believe that we have a public hearing at this morning's meeting. So at this point, I would like to invite you to stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You. So I'd like to move on to the rules of order for public comments. We do have one person signed up for public comments online, and so I will go through the rules first. The governing board welcomes public comments at its meetings by providing 2 opportunities for the public to address the board. If your topic of interest is not on the agenda, you may address the board during the public comments time slot near the beginning of the meeting. If the topic is on the agenda, you may speak just prior to the discussion of that agenda topic. In the event there is a public hearing, the opportunity to speak will be reopened. If you're joining remotely, as this morning's speaker is, and wish to make a public comment, you should have already submitted the Google form provided with the YouTube link. For those who may join us later in person, they need to hand in a completed purple form, the request to address the governing board, to our board secretary. The information requested on the form is required for the meeting minutes. Speakers will be called on when it's their turn to address the board. For those attending remotely, you may choose to enable your camera. As a reminder to remote attendees who wish to speak, please do unmute your microphone when called upon. Each speaker has 3 minutes to address the board. The sound of a buzzer indicates the end of your 3 minutes. In the event of a large number of speakers, the board may need to limit that time so they can conduct the business on the agenda. By law, the board cannot discuss, consider, or vote on topics that are not on the agenda. This assures the community that they are aware of the topics that will be discussed. If you wish to discuss a topic through written communication, board members' contact information can be found on the district's website. We appreciate the community's attendance and comments at this meeting. Thank you. So with that said, I believe we have one public person who wishes to make a public comment. Amy, is it just the one? Okay, thank you. And that is Jennifer Lauer. So Jennifer, if you're with us, I invite you to come off of mute and address the board. Okay, I'm getting a notification that she's no longer with us, so we will just hold for a few more seconds in case she dropped accidentally and is redialing. Jennifer, checking to see if you have rejoined. Slightly rhetorical question, because if she's not, she cannot answer. I appreciate that. Okay, we will move on. If that person does rejoin, please do let us know. And if their topic is on the agenda, they can choose to address the board at that time. So at this point, we will move on to the consent agenda. Any comment? Well, first of all, anything that anybody needs or wishes to pull from today's consent agenda? Eileen, Amy, I'm seeing shakings of heads. Okay.
Nothing to pull, thank you.
All right. Jacqueline, anything from you? Okay. Any questions? Or in the light of no questions, apologies, would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. All right.
I move that the governing board approve consent agenda items 3.1, the intergovernmental agreement between Catalina Foothills School District and the Jefferson County Educational Services Center as presented, and 3.2, the intergovernmental agreement number 25-22-ED between Catalina Foothills School District and Arizona Department of Education Special Education Teacher Tuition Assistance, parentheses SETTA, as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Okay, at this point, we will move on to our unfinished business. Item 4.1, approval of revisions to policy IJNDB and regulation IJNDB/R, use of technology resources in instruction. This is a second reading for action. I do see that we have a person online for public comments, so let me just move to Jennifer Lauer and see if she's there. Jennifer, are you with us?
Okay, can you guys hear me?
We can. So Jennifer,
Oh my God. Can you see me? My computer screen is half dead. Can you hear me?
we can hear you, Jennifer, but we cannot
Can you
see
see
you.
me? My computer screen is half dead. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Jennifer, but we cannot see you.
Oh my gosh, you guys, it's totally echoing on my end. Is it echoing on your end?
So Jennifer, you may have your speaker on in two places. Your
Echoing
microphone.
I think so. So you know what I'm going to do? If you don't mind, I'm going to try and just get in on my phone instead of this computer, and maybe that'll be better. So I'm just going to try that right. I think the way I get on though is going through the speaker request form. So I'll be back in like 60 seconds if that's okay.
Jennifer,
It's on right now.
it's not echoing anymore.
Is that person trying to? say
Jennifer, are
something?
you still with us?
I can't hear.
Oh, no.
Sorry, you guys. I'm trying to get my daughter off to boot camp this morning.
Jennifer,
Let me try it on my phone.
Jennifer, we
If I
can hear you
do that.
fine if you're still
No?
with us.
Okay, I'll try that.
Jennifer, can you hear us? Okay, Jennifer's left again, so
I think she's trying to phone in, Gina.
she is,
She
yeah.
meant-
I was just trying to let her know that we could hear her.
I know. I don't
yeah.
think she can hear us at all.
So what I will say, whilst we're waiting for Jennifer to hopefully rejoin us, is that according to the purple sheet, the topic that she wishes to speak about is our technology policy. And so with that in mind, since I've introduced the topic, this is an appropriate time for her to be able to address the board again. So we will hold. This will be her last opportunity to address the board, though, before we close this item. Or until we close this item, apologies. We'll be waiting for one more minute.
We would have the option to go down to the new business and just rearrange the agenda as well, if that's what you wanted to do.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Denise, thank you. We're going to hold until 1:15, and then if she's not here, we'll do that. We can bend it around a little bit. Okay. We have waited for 2 minutes, 2 minutes 30 seconds actually by my watch, so we are going to move on with the agenda. With that said, Dr. Bartlett, I think your suggestion is a good one. We will first move to new business in case this person returns. So if they do return, then let me know, okay? So new business, this is item 5.1, approval of personnel memorandum. This is an action item, and I will turn it over to Mindy Westover, our Associate Superintendent.
Good morning. We do have a very large personnel memo. It is our last big hire personnel memo prior to the start of school. We have made great progress there, so we are very excited about that. We did have one walk-in that hopefully you all received, and then our board members online, that was emailed to them this morning. We did have one EA that we were able to fill on Thursday, right before, so we wanted to make sure that got in time for the start of school. With that, I would take any questions.
Amy, Eileen, any questions from either of you?
No questions, just compliments to starting nearly fully staffed. It's amazing.
Yes.
It's very exciting. We are very excited about that. We've got a couple of part-time positions and one full-time we're making progress on as we speak, so we're hopeful we will get those filled shortly.
And are those the only gaps then?
Yeah.
Okay. And the plan for the start of the school year to cover those gaps is?
Each site has made plans of how we will start the school year in terms of, they are at the middle school and the high school, being able to cover those positions. So we do think that, we're hoping we'll find permanent full-time for those or positions, but at this point, we're ready to go, so.
It may be a long-term sub, or it may just be collapsing sections and having a little bit larger class sizes in some until we find someone.
And technically, the part-time position, the full-time position is a part-time position at 2 of the sites, so it's part-time everywhere.
Gotcha. Okay.
A couple of sections.
Can you
there.
restate the open positions? I know it was in a recent week in review, but I'm assuming that little list is
Sure.
up.
It is a part-time English teacher at Orange Grove and a part-time English position at Esperero Middle School, which creates the full 1.0, but it is part-time at both places, a couple of sections at each school. And then we have a part-time math position at the high school, and I'm trying to think the
Speech
last
language.
part-time, speech, we had a speech and language position that we're still looking to fill, and is there one other part-time? I think that's it.
I think that's it.
Right.
That's amazing. I'm looking at this list and I know the amount of work that this represents. This is quite the hustle, and I'm not sure we've, like in recent years, this is probably the lowest number of openings that we've had as we're approaching the beginning of the school year. So just kudos. This is amazing. Are we seeing teachers and candidates coming from any new sources? Or is it pretty much our usual suspects?
Really, we've had them coming from all over, some brand new educators entering the field. We have some that are coming from out of state. And we do have some veteran that are coming internal from across Tucson, so it's a little bit of everybody. The principals have worked very, very hard to get these hirings done. We have very rigorous hiring process, and our administrators at the sites have really been working hard, along with our HR department, to get these hires taken care of. I was lucky enough to be able to get one of the new hire orientations in about a week ago when they were in working with HR, completing paperwork, and we had just a great group of new eager teachers getting ready to start, so it'll be exciting. They do start their orientation this week, so we will welcome them with open arms to the Catalina Foothills School District. I'm very excited that they chose to either start their career or continue their career with us. So it has been a bit of a push from early March, and they have been kind of steadily hiring all along, so I don't know that we've seen the big massive group because it has kind of been a nice trickle throughout. So, but again, kudos to the team, the administrators and the HR department that have worked really hard to get this completed. So we're
To
excited.
your point, Eileen, I think what we're seeing is other school districts having to reduce staffing because of enrollment. I think we've seen some movement with educators that way.
Got it. Got it. Great job. Kudos to everybody. This is huge.
I would agree. Thank you for you and your team for all of the hard work in getting us here.
Absolutely.
Any additional questions or comments? Okay, with that, then I'll entertain a motion if somebody would like to make one.
I move that the governing board approve the personnel memorandum as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Okay. So with that done, I would like to return to item 4.1, which we had opened. We then paused. And this item is the approval of revisions to policy IJNDB and regulation IJNDB/R, use of technology resources in instruction. This is a second reading and is an action item. We do have somebody on the line who would like to make a public comment. So let me turn to that first, since it is within board guidelines for somebody to address the board prior to the topic in which they are interested. This person has expressed that they are interested in expressing comment on the technology policy. So Jennifer Loward, are you with us?
Yes.
Excellent.
Sorry for all that nightmare.
That's fine. We can hear you. And so you have 3 minutes, and feel free to address the board.
Thank you. I'm trying to get my camera to work.
Oh, no.
We can hear you. We just can't see you, which is
I think
fine.
her voice went out. Oh, there we go.
Jennifer, if you'd like to address the board, we do encourage you to begin. Jennifer, we cannot hear you. You may have accidentally muted your mic. Okay, Jennifer, we can now see you.
Hi, I was trying to get my camera on, and then
Okay.
that, of course, messed it all up. So
That's
I
great.
apologize.
We're
for
glad
all
you're
the-
here. You have 3 minutes to address the
Thank
board,
you.
please.
Thank you. So I don't have any specifically prepared comments, but, and I wasn't going to be able to join the meeting. My daughter's off at boot camp today, so she's out the door. So I just thought I would take a few minutes to mention the letter that some parents and our group TAP sent over to you guys in response to the last meeting. We talked about and proposed forming a working group this year to continue the evolution of the conversation around wireless devices in school. You had mentioned that that was something in the last meeting that you were going to do, so we wanted to get some more information on that and what the next steps might be for that. And also, you know, I think you can probably understand it's, we understand your predicament. We understand the timing and the complications around implementing a bell-to-bell policy. But we also and I know it's hard because it's a structured agenda, but because it's on the agenda, we're wondering if anybody could comment on the information that's been presented by other parents and by our group regarding the bell-to-bell policy. And, you know, I don't know if there's a point of view about, I know what you're doing now, but like potentially what you might be looking to do so that we can help focus our efforts and time on the matter in the best way that we can to be of assistance, but also to support implementing this policy eventually. So that's really what I was requesting, is just maybe if you can during the agenda item, comments on the discussion that was brought up last time about an ongoing working group or ongoing analysis of the policy. And if there are any other comments that anybody wanted to make about the information that's, you know, widely available out there and that has been presented about, you know, the reasons for this policy and why the current policy is in place versus a bell-to-bell policy. So that's it. Thank you so much. I appreciate all you guys do.
Thank you, Jennifer. All right, with that, Cheryl, I would invite you to join us.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So presented for your approval are the revisions to policy IJNDB and regulation IJNDBR, use of technology, resources, and instruction. And as you'll recall, House Bill 2484 amended ARS 15-120.05 relating to student access to the internet, student use of wireless communication devices, and student records. Policy IJNDB and regulation IJNDBR have been updated to ensure compliance with the new requirements. So you'll notice since the first reading that there have been many changes, especially to IJNDBR, which I highlighted in yellow in your packet. I don't intend to mention every single one of the highlighted changes because, as we talked about last time, some of them were clearly removed. There were removals because they were redundant or because they were language that didn't correspond to this particular policy. There were some changes that we made simply for clarity, where we moved whole paragraphs and sections to different areas of the regulation. Some of the deletions were because there was some redundancy and they weren't relevant. You'll also notice some things that were left in specifically the regulation, even though we recognize after our last conversation that they perhaps belong in an HR policy, but we need to leave them somewhere until that HR policy, GBEB, can be revised. So we're aware of that, we've marked that, and we have that down in our records for changing the next time GBEB comes up. So back to
Which will then revise
IJN.
this again.
Pardon me?
Which will then revise this again.
Yes, and then we'll go back and remove the pieces that aren't relevant to the use of technology and instruction. So there were two key revisions to IJNDB, one of them relating to restricting student access to social media platforms, except as allowed for educational purposes. We also have the limiting the use of wireless communications devices by students during the school day. We talked last time about the exceptions that allow students to use wireless devices for medical needs and for educational purposes or during an emergency. So I'm on IJNDB, and there were some edits made on page 2. Where there was some conversation about the phrase, "they may not be used for personal gain." We removed that from that piece because it's stated later on with more clarity. So that was a redundant piece that we took away. If you move on to page 4, this was our AI paragraph that we inserted, and we talked a bit about AI-driven tools. That piece, it's in the paragraph that begins AI-driven technologies on page 4. That's page 30 of your packet. It's at the middle of the page. The third to the last line of that bolded paragraph with AI intelligence technologies. We changed that sentence to read, AI-driven tools will be available to all students, and uses of AI technologies will comply with the FERPA and support data privacy and security. Is there any comment? Because that's the one you asked us to change. Is that one okay now? Okay.
We changed accessible to available.
Just to check with everybody, because that was the subject of a lot of discussion at our last meeting. Okay. Eileen?
Now I'm good.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Cheryl.
Great. All right, then we're going to move on to the bottom of page 4, which is page 30 of your packet, under parent legal guardian notification. You'll see that we just added some clarification there about when this will happen at the beginning of the school year. We'll provide a copy of the adopted policies to parents, legal guardians, teachers, students, and we'll notify them of any changes in the policy. Those were the only changes that were made to the policy. I'll stop there in case you have questions about those or anything else on IJNDB.
Any questions? Amy, Eileen, looking at you as well. Amy's good. No questions from Eileen. Jacqueline?
No question.
All right, let's move on to IJNDBR. Many, many eyes looked at this regulation because, as you pointed out in our last meeting, there is a lot of redundancy. There were pieces that needed to be pulled out. I'm sure you saw those in the reading where there were entire sections that were deleted because they really don't pertain. They weren't necessary or they were redundant. So on page 1, we did take your recommendation. That's page 32 of your packet, to replace the word minors with students. And if we move in IJNDBR, page 3, which is page 34 in your packet, we remove that entire section about directory information. It appears elsewhere. On page 4, which is page 35 of your packet, we replaced the subtitle, Bring Your Own Device, BYOD, to Personal Electronic Devices, PDs, and then made that change throughout the subsequent pages. Anytime BYOD was mentioned, we referred to them as PDs, which is what the new language is for that particular piece. We included on page 5, which is 36 in your packet, smart glasses, and then we do have that qualifying phrase afterwards, which isn't new, but it's and any new technology developed with similar capabilities. Gina pointed out at the last meeting that this changes all the time, and so that leaves us open. We can always update that if some new device comes up that we feel needs to be added into this piece. There is a change on the regulation that doesn't appear in your board packet. It came about as a result of a very good question from a board member. Thank you, Jacqueline. And it is on page 5, the middle of the page. It's the paragraph that begins with, "This regulation applies to a student or staff member's use of a PD while," and then it's one parentheses. I just want to make sure everybody's there so they can see it. So I'm on page 5, which is page 36 of your packet. Middle of the page, the paragraph beginning, "This regulation applies to a student's or staff member's use of," we're all good, we're there?
We're good.
So it was pointed out that we don't have Wi-Fi on buses, and why are we mentioning buses specifically as district, as a piece of district property on school property? So we decided to take out including buses, understanding that if you're on a bus in the parking lot and you have access to the Wi-Fi, that's fine, but we can't regulate. Once the bus leaves the perimeters of our ability to serve Wi-Fi, there's no reason to put that in there. So we removed the phrase including buses. Then it says 2 parentheses, at a school event, and we were asked to clarify that at a school event is one that is held on school property. So that new part reads like this. This regulation applies to a student's or staff member's use of a PD while 1, on school property, 2, at a school event held on school property, or 3, while using the district's internet, including at home. The reason that we're clarifying the idea, well, it's pretty obvious, I guess, now that we've said it, is held on school property. We don't have the ability to regulate what's happening at school events elsewhere that are held on other campuses. Any questions about that particular change? That's the only one that does not appear in your board packet, the one that was made just this last weekend. All right, let's move down to then the rest of the changes on page 5 are the ones that I referred to at the beginning where they were removed because they're repetitious. Repetitious are not needed in this particular policy. If you turn to page 6, which is page 37 in your packet, there, first bullet, top of the page, there was a change made to clarify when. So a school administrator or staff member always has the right to permit or prohibit a student from using a PD before, during, or after the school day. This was put in because it's the fail-safe, because sometimes there are times that aren't within the bell-to-bell situation where you're going to say to a high school student, you can't use your phone at this particular time. We can't list them all, but we can say there are times when you need to put the devices away. Then we come to the main change that was made, which is the second bullet. This is the one that delineates when students may use or may not use their personal devices. In the first open bullet, under in a classroom setting, a student or staff member may only use a PD for educational purposes at the direction of a teacher or administrator. And then we added this part because it's in the policy. We failed to put it in the reg, or for medical needs or during emergency. So we added the piece about for medical needs. In grades K to 8, student PDs will remain off and away for the day. In grades 9 through 12, student PDs will remain off and away from bell to bell during each class period of the school day. You'll see whole sections that were deleted below due to repetitious nature, or they didn't belong in this particular regulation. Same on page 7. Many things were deleted there because they didn't belong or they were repetitious. The next change is on page 8, page 39 of your packet. Bottom of the page. We reworded this one. This one was an important one, we thought, to correspond to other places where this is mentioned. So the wording is, an employee shall report disrespectful, defamatory, discriminating, harassing, intimidating, bullying, vulgar, and or obscene behavior, as well as questionable conduct, or content to a school administrator. So that wording was mirrored other places in the policy for students. If you move to page 41 of your packet, page 10 of the policy, you'll see that piece that I just talked about, where it's talking about when students are using school-related social media, the language is repeated there about if they see vulgar, intimidating, bullying, harassing language. So we had that mirror in both places. We clarified in that last bullet, a student's personal social media communication can be considered inappropriate regardless of when or where a social media post is made, if it has a negative impact on or causes a disruption to the school environment. That was just for clarity. On page 11, page 42 of your packet, the very bottom of the page, the last bullet, this is that other place where we removed the piece about for personal gain that we had talked about previously. And on page 43 of your packet, page 13 of the policy, we just removed some language toward the bottom of the page, the third to the last paragraph, because it was repetitive. We also included in the fourth to the last paragraph the idea of violation of the rules set out above and or a law, district policy, procedures, or school rule related to technology use, just to specify what we're talking about in this particular regulation. And those were the changes since the first reading. Any questions you have, I'm happy to take.
You've been busy. Thank you so much for your hard work on
Thank you to
this.
many people.
We've tried to slim it down quite a bit, but keeping the main parts. And then, like we said, we know that there needs to be a separation at some time of some of the personnel from the student use and versus our personnel use, and we will do that and bring those both back to you at a later time.
Thank you. Questions or comments from members? Yes.
Going back to page 9.
Page 9 of the reg.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
On the fourth bullet down,
One that begins employees
shall ensure that their profile and related social media site, et cetera, how they wish to present themselves publicly, the parent, legal guardian. There's like a word. Yeah, so I actually wrote this out last night. There needs to be a 2 before the parent and legal guardian, and remove the comma after, and put a comma after students.
Good eye. Thank you, Jacqueline.
Used to do this
Employees shall
for a
ensure
living.
that.
or add a to before the student.
We will fix that. Somehow that got past us.
It's a lot of scratch outs there.
Takes a village, as I always say.
Yes.
So how will you fix that? Just striking the parent, legal guardian, and students, are you going to strike that as well? So it says present themselves publicly and should not reflect negatively on the employer or district. Is that the fix there?
I think it's striking the parent, legal guardian, and
students.
And students, yeah. And related social media, okay, so employees shall ensure that their profile and related social media site are professional and consistent with how they wish to present themselves publicly and should not reflect negatively on the employees or the district. So if I remove parent, legal guardian, and students, does that work?
Yep.
Okay, I'll remove that.
catch,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Good catch.
Other questions or comments?
So I have a question, and this is on page 5, but just a clarification and a question. So the internet may only be accessed using the district-provided Wi-Fi. And I know there's limits to how that can be observed and enforced, but how will that be communicated to our students?
Well, this policy has to be communicated to, they're all given a copy of the policy, and the teachers will be discussing that with them. And their parents will get a copy of it, and they all have to sign off on that they've read the policies.
Okay, so this is also going in front of parents to say, here are the rules.
That's part of the new,
And everyone has to sign a technology policy as well.
And I know this year we are playing catch-up, that this has to be done at the start of the year. In future years, will this be included in the registration information so that it's electronically and automated? So- Other questions, Tom?
Are violations of these policies at the school administration's discretion as far as discipline and enforcement?
yes.
But I assume subject to the same type of matrix guidelines that we provide for other infractions as well.
Correct. Yes.
Inappropriate use of technology is one of our violations, and it does have a range of options.
I'm curious, are we providing any kind of structure at the high school to help enforce the policy? I know there was conversation at our last board meeting that some teachers use shoe things. I don't know, shoe trees or shoe,
Pouches.
whatever they are, that they hang on their doors that students put their cell phones in, and that to the point where even some teachers are using that for attendance purposes. Are we talking to teachers and providing them what they need to make this easier for them to enforce? That seems to me to be a very simple, cheap, and elegant way to kind of do this versus allowing students just to stick it in their backpack or what have you. I don't know. I'm asking the question, are we providing any more structure beyond just writing this in the policy that this is the way it's supposed to be?
Well, the high school already has those pouches. And
They all do.
Yeah, and at the middle school and elementary, they're putting them in their backpack. So they don't have the pouches at the middle school or elementary. They are in their backpacks.
And I was asking specifically about the high school because you're going in and out of
They
cell
have
phones.
those. They all have
They
those.
all have them already.
And if
and
they
can-
don't, then we will, yes, we will get those for them.
And then I guess I just, before we go, and I don't know if we're ready to close the discussion here, but I'd like to be able to respond to Jennifer's question about the continued study and how this goes forward and how we're thinking about using that or continuing that conversation with study groups or what have you.
Well, we haven't thought specifically about a study group yet because what we're thinking about is first we have to implement this policy with fidelity. So the teachers have to have opportunity. Then we have to survey our teachers about how this policy is going and what are their desires about changing our current policy. We don't have definite information that every teacher wants to change this policy that we have. So that's our first step in this first semester, is to implement with fidelity and get feedback from the classroom teachers about how it is going and the effectiveness and how much class time they are dealing with issues with technology, personal devices. So that's our first step, I believe, is really implementing the policy with fidelity, because we know that hasn't been done, and assessing what their how they want to proceed. What are their thoughts on how this policy is going?
Eileen, does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay, great. Anything else, Eileen or Amy?
I'm good.
Okay. And here in the room, any other questions, comments, discussion topics?
But you go ahead.
I have one, but you go ahead.
I have one as well.
Okay, then we'll let Amy go first.
Yeah, Amy, you're first.
Thanks. I firstly want to acknowledge my appreciation for the advocacy by the Tech Aware Parent Group in showing up to meetings and putting together research and reaching out to us and sending emails. I fully appreciate that this is a very big topic. And because this is a big topic with big implications, I feel particularly strongly that it would not be in our students' best interest to react too quickly in enacting a policy before we have the kind of feedback that Dr. Bartlett's talking about, both from our teachers who are in the classroom implementing it, from a broader range of our families that, of course, are much more numerous than just the group that we're hearing from at this point. Also, I think the culture in our district is to study an issue and to receive data, research, feedback, and then move forward. I think that served us very well in many other contexts, and I expect that it will serve us well in this as well. So I will read, whatever is put before me, whether it's from in terms of research background. I think Jennifer alluded to the materials that they've sent. I appreciate that. I'll consume it. I'll take it into consideration. I'm not prepared to say at this point what I will do in the future because I don't have the information to make that decision. But at this point, I want to acknowledge that I have heard the feedback that we've received so far and appreciate it. And I look forward to receiving more as time goes on. And I trust that the administration will bring us more information and perhaps a proposed revision to this policy. And we will act in due course with greater information than we have right now.
Thanks,
That's
Amy.
it.
Jacqueline?
Well, somewhat in the same vein, when we're talking about gathering data and an evaluation process, I personally would be interested to hear from our students.
Yes,
And-
they are
Yes.
a key person as well, key people.
Right, maybe it happens at the site council level or even at the high school surveying the students directly. I would love to know what
Their
they
thoughts.
think and if it's made, what kind of difference they perceive.
They're an
After
important
implementation.
constituent.
They are our constituents.
After all,
You're
that's who we're
talking
here
after
for.
implementation of this
Right,
policy.
Post-implementation.
Okay, not
Yes.
how they would feel about having them take it
No,
away.
yeah, I would love to know.
After we implement this policy
Yeah.
with fidelity, how it's going for them.
Tom, I believe you said you had a question or comments as well?
And it is related to both of those. I also want to express appreciation for the parents who have voiced their opinions on this issue and emphasize that we do have a research and data-driven approach to this kind of decision-making. One of the things that I think we've encountered, I speak for myself, I've encountered in looking into this issue is it is so new that while there's plenty of information out there about the impact of social media on developing minds, et cetera, there's very little data on how school policies have impacted any of that. And so in the absence of that type of information, I think first and foremost, in any case, it makes the most sense for us to be paying attention to our constituents, to our teachers, administrators, parents, students. But I just want to emphasize that we are keeping our eyes open. I certainly am, on all new research that comes in that specifically addresses how school policies relating to personal electronic devices are impacting students.
Thank you. Any last questions or comments?
Thank you for all of your work.
Because it's a team effort.
It is indeed.
But you're very welcome. Thank you.
So I would be happy to entertain a motion if anyone would so wish.
As amended with those two
It will be
changes?
as amended, correct.
Okay, so the two changes are on page 5 and page 9.
I'll go for it. Okay. I got there first, right? All right. I move that the governing board approve revisions to policy IJNDB and regulation IJNDB-R, use of technology resources in instruction as amended.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
We'll let Eileen take this one. She hasn't had any today. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Cheryl and team, I know that was an incredible amount of work to get us to this point. Clearly, the job is not done. This continues to be a very fast-moving, ever-evolving landscape. I'm certainly very heartened to hear the plans for continuing to dive deep into this with our students and our staff and our teachers. But with that said, let me just take a moment to say thank you for your hard work in getting us this far.
And thank all of you, too. It really is a team, so we
Team effort.
appreciate, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so that concludes item 4.1. We've already completed item 5.1. As a reminder, we flipped those agenda items around because of a public comment, a person who was struggling to get on for public comment, apologies. And so that brings us to item number 6, which is adjournment. Anyone would like to make a motion?
I move that we adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries and we are adjourned. Thank you very much. That is the end of this morning's meeting.
See you on Friday, everyone.
I won't see you on Friday, but have a lovely, it's